"What's wrong?" I asked without looking up, trying to keep my frustration to myself. It would be misplaced. After all, it wasn't Luca's fault. "What's it gonna be, boss? Pastry or hitting the punching bag in the gym downstairs?" "Don't call me that." "Fine," he said, and then approached my desk, placing a donut and coffee in front of me and looking me right in the eye. "Ryan, what's it gonna be?" I took a sip of the coffee, tasting the bitterness of the cheap roast and considering my options. Luca's gaze held the right amount of care and dare, so without giving it further thought, I got up and left the office with him at my heels. "We'll be back in an hour," I said to Zeke. "Don't break him, boss. I reckon we can still get another 6 months out of him," he said. I ignored him. Less than 5 minutes later, we'd changed into workout gear and walked into the almost empty gym. Luca didn't say anything. He just kept the punching bag in place while I threw my frustrations out onto it. Then we moved to the pads. Luca read me like a book, intercepting every single move I made. That pissed me off even more, so though we'd been at it for the last 40 minutes, and I was drenched in sweat, I kept going. My arms ached, and my hands needed a reprieve from the smelly, sweaty gloves, but it wasn't until I lost my footing and tripped on the mat that I finally called it. I tried to pull new air into my lungs, but they burned from exhaustion. I turned over and lay on the ground, looking up at the ceiling. "Ready to talk now?" Luca said, sitting cross-legged next to me. "He wants to scale down the security for the wedding." "Who, Chris?" "The Prime Minister." "Isn't it Chris's decision? After the attack on Charlie's brother last year, I thought they didn't want to take any chances." I nodded. "It'll be fine. He's just showing me who's really in charge here. Unfortunately for him, it's not who he thinks it is." My predecessor, James, who also happened to be engaged to Charlie's brother, had warned me the biggest wall I'd find when I took over his job was the Prime Minister. There I was, wondering if it were the color of my skin that would be the problem, but in that respect it didn't matter that I was black, or American for that matter. But the Prime Minister had aspirations of running the country, something that would never happen in Ladovia, and he knew that. Fortunately, I didn't have many dealings with the man on a day-to-day basis, since my main job was to run Chris's security team, where I'd need to use the punching bag more often than not. The training helped to clear my head after the meeting, so I could focus again on what my team needed to do to offer the right level of security to Chris and Charlie on their wedding day. Still, there was something no amount of training would ever take away. I sat up, putting me at eye level with Luca, and far too close. I was drenched in sweat and my muscles ached, but there were two parts of my anatomy that always reacted to him. One I'd learned to keep closed off, but the other always seemed to have ideas of its own, ideas that could easily give away how I felt about Luca. His expression was the same he always carried, relaxed, carefree, as if life had a way of putting everything right without much worry. Looking at Luca, you'd never know the horrors he'd witnessed and survived in active service for our country. His hazel eyes, however, burned with an intensity I only ever saw in him when he was working to protect Charlie. Well, he didn't need to worry about me. I didn't need protection. "Thanks for the workout," I said, standing up and removing my boxing gloves, using my shirt to wipe the sweat from my face. "Ryan?" I looked at him. "What?" He paused, looked down at the floor, and picked up the pads. "Never mind." "Okay. I'm going to grab a shower. I think I've earned that donut on my desk." Luca laughed and followed me to the locker room. By the time I got out of the shower, Luca was gone. His wet towel hung on the hook on the side of his locker. I exhaled my relief. Maybe it was the stress of coordinating the security for the wedding. Maybe it was because I hadn't gotten laid in longer than I cared to think about, but being around Luca was getting harder and harder.